for NuWellness TV with Dr. Lee. Join your host, the accomplished Dr. Cherilyn Lee, as she welcomes the leading experts in health and well-being as they explore the advancements in natural health, physical fitness, nutrition, integrative medicine, and self-discovery.
Thank you for joining us today or evening, whatever time you're watching the show. I want to thank you so much because all my shows are very powerful. And I am blessed and honored to have such a wonderful guest who has taken the time out of his life to really do the research. And that's what's really needed. It's the research when it comes to different things that hit the market. So, our show title today is very powerful. Do you know the difference between cannabis and CBD for optimum health? I've been dealing with both products, the cannabis and the CBD, with a lot of my patients, and we're going to kind of go into that. But I have the only one and no other than Kelly Brown. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee.
Thank you. So we're going to kind of just jump in. I ask people, do they know the difference? And actually, I kind of did something live yesterday, and a lot of people said, no, I don't know the difference.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting to get that response even yesterday when I went live to just ask that question. So people are really tuned in today to want to know what is the difference between the CBD and the cannabis for optimum health.
Right.
And that's the key for optimum health. We could feel good, but we want to be to optimum health. We have lab testing, different things we do to say this is the normal range. Well, those ranges were not normal people.
Right.
So what is optimum health? That's past being in that normal range.
Right.
You want to be at the most optimum and the best quality of life. So without further ado, I want you to tell people a little bit about yourself and why are you doing this? Why are you doing such intense research?
Yeah, well, thank you. So again, my name is Kelly Brown. I'm the Happy Holistic.
The Happy Holistic. That's why he's always happy. Look at that smile.
Yes, because I'm in the cannabis. No, actually, I had that name before I got into cannabis, which is really kind of ironic, but very fitting. Mm-hmm. So I really got into health when my uncle started getting sick about 15 years ago, and he didn't have an alternative with chemo. He didn't want to go in the hospital for 6 months. So we took the watchful waiting, which was the alternative. We got him healthier. We consulted with professionals.
I know you like moving, but we're going to keep your chair kind of still.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. You're not nervous. This is all your friends and people out there.
So anyway, we helped him, and that really saw for me the value of how we can fix ourselves. We can fix our own health. We can be our best doctors.
Yes.
And we really need to, because unfortunately the medical model has so many issues, and prevention is not one of them. So I really got into becoming certified and learning as much as I could. When I was introduced to cannabis about 6 years ago, it was just a chance, random radio interview on Coast to Coast with George Norrie, because he does have a lot of health topics from time to time.
Yes, he does. Yes.
Great guest.
Yes, he does.
And the author named Clint Werner, he wrote a book called Marijuana, the Gateway to Health. And so I was intrigued. It didn't fit anything I'd ever been taught. It didn't fit anything. I thought it was really it had to be some sort of a scam, or maybe just a way to try to legalize cannabis, which I have no problem with. But, come on, don't tell everybody it's a great medicine for cancer and Alzheimer's and all these things. So I got the book. I had to read it about 4 or 5 times. And it didn't sink in until I met somebody with stage 4 lung cancer. That's what she told me anyway. Didn't want to do chemo. She suggested what would I suggest, and at the time I was reading this book, and I said, well, I think you got to try the cannabis oil.
Yes.
And I couldn't get anything for her, and I ran into her about a year and a half later, and she told me it's gone. And I said,
oh my goodness.
What did you do? Because
we both have great stories. Isn't that wonderful?
And she said, no, I've just been doing edibles. I've been doing this and that. I've just been taking it, and they can't find it now. And it turns out the cannabis with lung cancer is probably more effective than any other form of cancer. And that's the number one cancer, right? So that really got me going. I realized at that point I had to really go all in. I had to study this. I had to find out what this guy was talking about. I did the PubMed studies. I researched it. It all proved out. And then I hooked up with a local collective, and we've been proving it on a case-by-case basis.
We're going to kind of tell people what are collectives.
A collective is a nonprofit organization. It's a group established to cater to the needs of medical cannabis patients.
Okay.
So in 1996, when the law was passed in California, people were kind of on their own to get it wherever they could. There wasn't really a legal mechanism for them to get it. So in 2004, they signed a bill which established these collectives, which would allow these groups to come together to provide for patients, provided they get their medical recommendation, sign up with the collective, all legal, and on a yearly basis, and then legally the collective can provide. So as opposed to dispensary where you go on a street corner, you go into a retail and buy the products, this is done non-retail, so it's private, and it's protected just like a medical visit.
Right, it certainly is. And I do have a very dear friend who is one of the physicians who write the prescriptions. Back then in 2004, he was writing the prescriptions, and he still is. And the one thing I was telling people, be very, very careful about a lot of the places like on every corner now, because what's happening in the New England Journal of Medicine, they're showing that we're having more people present in the emergency room with psychotic disorders. And that's coming from, I'm almost certain, people going to a lot of the smaller places because you don't know what that is. It's not organic. You're looking at GMO. We're looking at what are they spraying on this crop. And I've seen within the last 15 years when people were doing all kind of things too with not growing their own, which was not legal back then, but just getting marijuana and smoking it, I've seen teenagers with throat cancer from this because it's not so much the marijuana. People have to realize, or the cannabis is what's sprayed on the cannabis.
It's like
this
the situation with tobacco and cigarettes.
So I tell people, be very careful. You want to make sure you're getting something that's organically grown, free of pesticides and herbicides. These things are really important. And this is why another reason why you're here, because you're going to be telling people which, ones that are more suitable. I do use them in my practice, and for prostate, people with elevated PSAs. I have used it for lung cancer, seizures, for so many different components, and it's just been amazing. That's, again, why you're going to go into some more detail.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you'd be interested to know, Dr. Lee, right now there is a shortage in a lot of the dispensaries around the state because as of July 1st, some of the new regs kicked in as far as the products being lab tested and verified. And they're having a hard time meeting that standard now. So that tells you that there's a lot of producers out there. And there's a lot of illegal grows out there. I grew up in Humboldt County. And Humboldt County has maybe 10,000 illegal grows, they estimate, and they've got 2 officers. They only can prosecute about 125 a year. And these are people from out of the country coming in. They're spraying all kinds of chemicals and toxic things.
Yes.
These also, you have to worry about mold. So you got heavy metals, you got pesticides, and it's a real serious issue in a lot of dispensaries. A lot of the there have been TV crews that have gone into dispensaries and found, purchased products and then had them tested and found all kinds of bad. So you really have to be careful, and that goes for any natural product. I like to liken it to, there's 3 factors. There's source, there's process, and delivery. So what's your source? Where is it coming from? Is it organic and clean? Is the process itself clean and effective? And does it deliver the goods to the body?
Yes. And we want to kind of keep going kind of back to that because that's very powerful. And people need to know that because I have a lot of people telling me, well, I'm doing such and such for glaucoma, but you're going to a dispensary and it's gotten worse. Or one person was actually purchasing it all the time, and their glaucoma is to the point they're almost blind. Yeah. And I said, you did not have the proper one because we know scientifically the research is there. Some of the major hospitals have put it in pill form, and for glaucoma and other conditions, then people have done well. Yeah. So, what you're getting is not something that's natural, have not been processed properly, and you want to know where it's coming from.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there's a big issue with the dispensaries. The dispensaries are set up, let's face it, for the recreational market.
Right.
They're set up for people who want to get high, and that's fine. But the problem is people hear about the healing medicinal powers. They go there, and very few of the bud tenders are going to have the education to be able to properly help them to get what they need. And that's part of the problem with the CBD craze. So
Yes.
this was the topic of the show today, the CBD and the confusion with CBD and cannabis. CBD is legal as a dietary supplement as long as the THC level is below 0.3%.
0.3%, yes.
So as a dietary supplement, it can be sold in stores. It can be sold online, which it is now. It can cross state lines. So there's not a problem with that. The problem is that CBD itself is just part of the cannabis plant.
Yes.
And it's in a tincture form. It's not going to put cancer in remission in 3 or 4 months. Like
And
the
you
full
have people
extract
say
oil
they
will.
feel better, and that's what we go back to, feeling better or having optimum health.
Right.
That's why this show is so important to know. You need to know the difference between the two and have optimum health.
Exactly. So when we say Optimum Health as natural healers, people who study the body, what we're talking about is a concept known as homeostasis.
Exactly.
So basically all the body systems are functioning properly. They're all communicating properly. They're all adjusting. They're in the right range. They're not, the body's not having to go to any extremes. So everything's functioning at top form.
Exactly.
And it just so happens that the system in the body that cannabis works on, the endocannabinoid system, does exactly that. So this is a system we just found out. We just found out about 30 years ago through cannabis research, accidentally. They took a synthetic cannabinoid and they marked with radioactive tritium. They followed it through a rat's brain, and it docked into a receptor site on a cell. And
Okay.
that became what's known as CB1. And we found out there's 2 main receptors and probably more, 5 or 6 more. We don't really know. The research isn't there. And there's also endocannabinoids in our body which plug into these receptors.
Yes.
And the magic of phytocannabinoids is that they enhance the system greatly. So when the body's in a disease state out of homeostasis, which is usually how you get in disease state,
Exactly.
the phytocannabinoids plug into these receptors and they create the wellness. They bring the body back into range, back into focus. And that's what we want. So this system, and it's funny, they've theorized what this system was since the 40s. They didn't know how the nervous system, the immune system, the endocrine system, they all talk together.
Right.
And now they know it's this endocannabinoid system. And the tragedy is, it's been known for 30 years. Doctors still don't know about it.
Right.
Dr. Allen commissioned a study about 5 years ago of the medical schools in this country. Only 13% taught anything about the endocannabinoid system. And now we know how important it is for health. And I'm sure probably none of those doctors heard anything about cannabis acting upon this system so
Right.
dramatically. So when we talk about what cannabis has, CBD is just one cannabinoid of maybe
Just one.
100. We know about CBD and we know about THC primarily. Those are the 2 most studied. And of course, THC is the one everybody knows that gets you high, gets a psychoactive effect.
Right.
CBD, on the other hand, does not. And that's why it's so attractive. It has such great application for anxiety, inflammation, and just overall calming of the nervous system while retaining focus. And of course, it's all non-toxic. So there's also terpenes. There's a whole range. Cannabis is probably the most complicated biochemical plant there is, with the most components. And it all works together in a perfect synergy all together.
When you
They're
have it
much
all
more
together
powerful.
and not
It's called-
separating it.
It's been called the entourage effect. It's actually more of an ensemble. So as we're learning, they all work together.
Yes.
And this is also backed up in the studies. There's been studies at Hebrew University that showed that CBD alone, pure CBD, was not as effective. There was a dose response where it didn't have a continued effect compared to an extract containing the other cannabinoids and terpenes like you find in the plant.
Yes. So, which is very good. And also, even when you take it a step further, they found out when it had the other components, it caused apoptosis and caused destruction and of cancer cells. That's why it's worked so well with the lung cancer. I know with the prostate, I don't work with people. I've also worked with people with liver. And in my practice, we say abnormal cells, but with liver cancer. So we've seen it, and we know it does not hit all types of cancer. But sometimes when you're working with the whole plant, that's why I think some people not respond as well as some others, is because they did not work with the entire plant.
Right.
And they were taking one component over here and one over there. And while I'm there, I really just want to say that if you know someone or you yourself, unfortunately, is taking any type of chemotherapies, you must check with your doctor and be your own advocate. Find out the name of the medication that you're using, the chemotherapy, to look to see if the chemotherapy that you're taking is not a carcinogenic. And if it's a carcinogenic, that's what you're trying to do, is get rid of the cancer. And if you're taking a medication that's causing cancer, or chemotherapy agent that's causing cancer, just find out. Be more proactive in your own treatment. So if that's happening and they're working on eradicating a cancer in your body, I'm not going to go against the medical establishment, because that is my background too, both. But what I want you to do is to be more proactive and know, if I'm on chemo, what is the name of it? Check it out yourself. You can Google it and find out, does this medication cause cancer? It's not. It's in the PDR, physician death reference. Nothing is hiding from you. So if it is, you want to start doing some other things. So while they're doing what they're doing, you can make sure that whatever this new cancer is going to happen, it does not. I had a very young girl who was treated for bone cancer. Very young, and this whole story was just really kind of a nightmare, but I'm not going to go into the whole story. Treated her for bone cancer at one of the major hospitals. Cancer was gone. Called the family, said, bring her back. We now want to put her on chemo. Well, the cancer's gone. Why do you want to use chemo? The chemo that they used caused leukemia. So you must check out and see what it is that they're going to give you and what are the side effects, so possibly you can counteract that. Because sometimes in certain cases you cannot fight if it's a child. It's a lot you have to go through.
Right.
But just be your own advocate.
Yeah.
Check with a holistic practitioner. Call my dear friend here, Kelly Brown, who is wonderful. Check with someone who is board certified, who's working in this whole field and can watch your lab work. Talk to your doctor. Some doctors now are becoming more and more open. We have a whole group now called functional medicine doctors, which I'm part of. And these are a lot of your MDs. So they're more open. So you want to make sure you're working with an open-minded person with your condition, because that is so important. You have to be more proactive in your own health care.
Absolutely.
You have to.
In the collective that I've been working with, we do embrace a group effect, so we do work with the doctors and make sure they're on board. It does work while people are on chemo, but really because of and they just did another study last year showing the effects of chemo in causing new cancers and faster acting, opening up the pathways for cancer. So, we think it's best if people just do the cannabis oil and other natural spectrum treatments and not chemo, because really you're really working against yourself. And there are lots of studies to back that up, and our own personal anecdotes that we could share about that. But typically with the full extract that we use, it takes a while for people to titrate up because they need a certain dosage.
Yes, you do. Mm-hmm.
It's not the same for everybody. It's going to vary by cancer and by type. And some people are going to be more sensitive. But once you get to that dosing state, that therapeutic dose, we call it, you need about 2 or 3 months typically. We see major results and we see remission. So we're talking stage 4 to 0.
Oh, I have seen them.
Within a matter of 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I just read studies and I just saw I have in my course, I have many
theories.
I have many famous known people on the internet. You can Google their stories. They have medical records. But until it's somebody that you refer to the collective, that you know personally that is in remission,
Yes.
it all doesn't hit home.
Exactly.
And then you see that. And I would say 70% of our patients in the collective are cancer because that's the most immediate, that's the most life-threatening, and we see these incredible results. So, I mean, we don't have the clinical studies for human studies because they're not allowed because it's a Schedule I substance.
Yes.
But we have, and I think I have a slide somewhere I could show you, 20,000 preclinical. We have published scientific articles on cannabinoids. So this has been studied to death. We have maybe 10,000 on cancer alone.
Oh, my goodness.
And mice and the other animals they use, they all have the endocannabinoid system we do. So this goes back 600 million years. They've traced it to the sea squirt. So any animal, any advanced life form with a skeletal system has the endocannabinoid system, regulating the body, keeping it homeostasis,
Right.
keeping cancer controlled. We know cancer is a mitochondrial disease.
Yes.
It's not from the DNA, and that's why the cancer research is going right down the wrong track because, you know, they've actually done experiments to show that it's not coming from the nucleus. It's the mitochondria that are damaged and switched to this
And you
mode.
would think you would check into it because that's your energy.
Right.
And
You
your
only live as
ATP,
long as your mitochondria.
Your ATP, your energy
Absolutely.
cycle. And you would think if a person, just like recently I had a patient who he actually went to the hospital. He's a member of an HMO. And he told them, I don't know how many times, I'm getting weaker and tired. I am not feeling well. And nobody worked him up, number one, for cancer. And then by the time he went to the ER, because he was so weak he was passing out, then they found out this is the situation. And still they did not work him up. So it is so important. Like I said, you have to ask questions and get opinions, get more than one opinion. And, make sure you have the right tests that are done to make sure. Because some things have been misdiagnosed and you didn't have cancer at all.
Oh, yeah. And in my class that I teach, so I've developed a class since I first talked to you, I think it was about a year ago.
Yeah.
I've actually developed 2 classes for practitioners because I want to teach other practitioners like yourself so we can spread this to our patients, to people we know, and be really the advocators, the front line, and clearing up the stigmas about this.
And you have the protocols and everything.
Showing how people could use it. But so for my first class, I have 10 different cancers. That I cover, different types, and I go through all the studies. But what really gets their attention is when I talk about the actual case study I present, where somebody is, it's the same, somebody goes in for a pain in their side.
Yes.
They're having a pain, they can't explain in the back or whatever, and I have no idea. They go into the doctor and they say, oh, I'm sorry, you have stage 3 lung cancer.
Yeah.
Or prostate or pancreatic cancer, God forbid.
Exactly.
And oh no, and so they're taken from 0 to 60 off the cliff.
Yes.
And what do? Well, they're right there with the doctor. So the doctor says, we have to start chemo and radiation immediately.
Right now.
And if you don't do it, right, and of course the family is, so anybody who wants to do an alternative treatment is already behind the 8 ball.
Oh, yes.
You're already in a very hard position, especially coming in as practitioners trying to help the person.
Yes.
But time after time, these people went through the chemo, the radiation, and they got sicker. They developed all kinds of side problems,
and
horrible,
they end up
and
with a
suffered.
secondary type of cancer.
And they're basically told, they're terminal. We can't do any more chemo and radiation.
And
Sorry,
you're sent home.
You're going to have to go home and put your stuff in order. We've done everything we can.
Exactly.
And that's when they turn to cannabis oil. Somebody in the family or somebody tries the internet. They find out about this. What do we got to lose? Let's get it. Let's try it. Even if it's not legal in their state, we're going to get it. And all of a sudden, they start feeling better. They start moving. They're sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night. It's for sleep. They're able to cope with everything better. And then they go in and get their screening in a couple months, and it's gone. And this story is repeated constantly. You see it constantly happening.
All the time.
So you look at all the studies in the PubMed. We don't have the human clinical studies, but we have all these other anecdotal observational studies.
Yes.
Granted, they're not in the lab. They're not carefully controlled, but you'd have to be pretty blind not to admit.
Yeah, and you're
that this
dealing
is
with
happening.
something that's natural with no side effects.
Right. And it's not toxic. And
it's not
here's
toxic.
the thing. So
yeah.
what's really stopping us from getting this established and used more is the stigma. And in my class, I spend a good hour or so on the suppression of cannabis as a medicine because it's the world's oldest medicine. It goes back 6,000 years. It's in the Chinese traditional medicine. It's buried in the graves with the noblemen It wasn't looked at as just medicine, but also a spiritual tonic, because really they believed it was it wasn't just the physical body, it's the mental and the spiritual if you want to be healthy. And it embraced, so that's why you saw it in the religious practices. In India, it was so important the British could not take it away. They studied it in the 1890s. They said you would destroy the society if you took cannabis away from them.
Right.
So you have all this religious background, and then you come to the United States. It was used here for 100 years as medicine, third leading ingredient. All the drug companies made it, used for about 100 different conditions, and then it was suddenly outlawed. And that would be a whole show in and of itself, why it was outlawed, but it was outlawed. And unfortunately, we've been suffering with that ever since. And the problem is we have maybe almost 80 years of this negative programming that has gone on. Even movies like Cheech and Chong, which I loved growing up. Cheech and Chong movies were very entertaining, but it feeds into the stigma about how it's a horrible drug. It, make you do awful things, and unfortunately, older people won't try it. Younger people are more receptive. Older people won't, because the stigma's still there about getting high.
Right.
And here's the thing, for a cancer or a critical illness, you will need a huge dose, and you will need THC most likely. But to prevent most of these things from happening in the first place, cancer, dementia, which we all have to look forward to, getting older, diabetes.
I'm not looking forward to it. So I'm not going to have it.
No. It's totally preventable. You can microdose, including THC, in small doses during the day and never get high and never feel impaired. You could still carry out your business. You take some sativa in the morning, gives you energy. You alternate with the CBD at night. You take some indica to relax and chill out and get your sleep.
I want you to kind of say that a little slower so people can understand that the dosing and what brand or what type you're taking, morning, afternoon, and night. So there's totally different one you're going to take for sleep and help with the whole healing process while you're asleep as well.
So the types of cannabis, the major groups are, when it comes to THC strains, are sativa and indica. So the way we tell them apart for most people is we say indica means in the couch.
Okay.
Because when you do indica, most people, everybody's got a different endocannabinoid system that expresses differently. So it may be different. However, indica is going to tend to make you more relaxed. It's the body high.
Okay.
So it's going to put you in the couch. So that's one you would want to do more in the evening.
Bedtime.
If you have extreme pain, you want
not
indica.
Not at work or not behind driving.
But if you have the pain and you need it, take it anytime. You're going to need that. It's a little better for pain. Sativa is more focused in the brain.
Okay.
So it's really good for depression. It's really good for ADHD. Mental issues, migraine is phenomenal. I have a young girl with ocular migraines, to the point where she'd have to pull over the side of the road and wait for an hour for them to clear. She would go to tunnel vision. I started to get her on this. She started having an attack, and it was gone in 10 minutes. And now she's on it preventatively and stays away. She doesn't get it. It's the best migraine.
So many women who, during their PMS. Now, what about with the THC, a person who is working a job where they're going to be tested? Is there a problem?
Great question, and very trenchant with the times.
Yes.
So even though in California we were the first ones to get medical cannabis, you can legally do it. However, your workplace will not protect you.
Yes.
So if they drug test you, even though you're not using on the job, and this has happened to a lot of people, they've been let go even if they have a condition.
Yes.
And this is part of the law that's really changing fast. So here's something very ironic. This is how fast it's evolving. So Oklahoma just recently passed medical cannabis. And in that law, Oklahoma took a long time, very conservative state, had a lot of opposition, but they have workplace protection. So what that means is if you're using on the job, or it affects your work, and you drug test, you can definitely be laid off. You can definitely be fired. However, if you test positive on a drug test, they have to show it somehow you're using it on the job or it's affecting your job performance, as it should be, as it is for alcohol, as it is for anything else.
Yes.
Because is it affecting the job performance?
Exactly.
A woman won a case in Connecticut suing for wrongful termination because she told them she had Crohn's disease. This was the only thing that worked for her Crohn's disease. A year in, tested positive. They fired her. She sued, and she won because
Very
of
good.
medical necessity, and they did not make an accommodation for her. So you're going to see this, and it's a sin that California, which prides itself on being so progressive and pro-worker and pro-labor, is way behind the curve here. So it's evolving, and it's going to happen. But yeah, for now, there are certain people that they might not get tested all the time, but if they had an accident, they can get tested. And of course, there's huge liability involved there.
Most
So
definitely.
yeah, and even driving with it is an issue too. So
Exactly.
But the law is evolving, and it's being fought day by day in the courts, in the legislatures, the groundswell is coming.
Yes, it is.
You have people moving. We have medical refugees in this country. People
we do.
moving from states where they can't do cannabis for their
I know quite a few
five-year-old
have
daughter
uprooted and
that's got
left.
seizures, like Charlotte Figi. They have to
Yes.
move to Colorado or a state where they can get the cannabis oil. But that's what they have to do, unfortunately, in this climate.
Yeah, and a lot of them are leaving too because of the vaccinations. But definitely with the cannabis, because your life. I mean, you have one. This is it.
That's it. And
This is
you're
it.
going to do what you have to do, whether it's legal or not. And the more people that do that and stand up, and the more of us that can get together behind this and support this movement, and get it out there that this is a medicine that needs to be protected, and we can't leave it up to big pharma.
No.
So what's going on right now is you have medicines for seizure and epilepsy, which are the first that they've been coming out and testing. Of course, the government has allowed these companies to go off Schedule 1 because they're pharmaceutical companies to test their drugs, and they're going to be on the market very soon. I think they've got approval for Epidiolex, and Sativex is coming soon. However, they're not as effective, and they're not as safe. And we've actually done studies with that compared to the whole plant extract. So, the only reason somebody would do that is if they couldn't get something else.
Right.
Because if your seizures, you're still having 10 or 20 seizures a day and you're having side effects, that's not a remedy.
Well, that's really, it saddens to me to say that was the cause of my mother's. That's how my mother passed. It was from seizures. And it was so long ago before we really got involved with the cannabis. And plus, she was from the old school. She probably would not have taken it.
Right.
But it was just very sad. And I kept showing her doctor, where you're giving her a medication for her seizures, that one of the side effects is seizures.
Right.
Then you're giving her another medication for, I think it might have been one of the statins, and it caused a whole array of problems.
Right.
And then you're looking at her and saying, well, she's got all these medical problems.
Hippocratic oath. First do no harm.
And I want to say, we use it, and we want to make sure that your diet. So it's not just a standalone. Everything is in place. The diet,
Definitely.
your emotional attitude, your spiritual, everything has to be balanced.
That's right.
But I would like to bring up one that this is in the PDR. This is in the medical desk reference book. If you or somebody is taking a blood pressure medication, check the PDR to make sure that blood pressure medicine is not a side effect or going to cause you in the long term cancer. Your calcium channel blockers for high blood pressure is one of the ones that is showing in the PDR that would lead to breast cancer. So it's not hidden from you.
Right.
We just don't take the time. And when you have high blood pressure, the doctor's not going to tell you that. They're trying to save your life, that you don't have a stroke. But there's things you can do. And one thing with the cannabis is great for the blood pressure.
Yeah.
It's good for the blood pressure. So we want to make sure that you're not taking a blood pressure medicine. Check the PDR. Some of the blood pressure medicine will cause pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
So definitely check the blood
It's not one
pressure
you wanna mess
medicines.
with.
You can Google it and say the name of the medicine, does it cause cancer? The medical research will come up. This is not anecdotal. This is not something some holistic person is just saying. It's right there in the physician's desk reference. Check it out for yourself. Knowledge is power, and you can live a lot longer. Let's work on some natural things for the blood pressure to have it down normal.
Right.
But the longer you stay on these medications, the side effect is going to be. It's like, I think in some of the statin drugs, I think lead to
statin drugs are awful.
lead
There's
to
so many
dementia,
problems.
cancer, diabetes.
And
we know that.
the other thing is they know it
Parkinson's.
drops CoQ10 levels, And there are still doctors who will not recommend
Put you on a
CoQ10
CoQ10.
supplementation, which
Exactly.
is it's criminal, really.
It really is.
They know it. They should know it. And of course, if your CoQ10 levels drop, guess what? You're going to have heart problems.
And I tell people, if you are taking a blood pressure medicine, certain things you want to know yourself. You want to know about your adrenal glands. You want to know about your cortisol level. You want to know about your CoQ10. These are some tests that you can order for free, not free, but you can order yourself without a doctor's prescription from Life Extension. So you're taking certain medication, go online, go to lifeextension.com and order some of these tests yourself to see where you are. And then you can get with a licensed practitioner to say, okay, how much should I take? What brand I should take? Because, same thing with the CBD, with your cannabis. They're not all created equal, as we know, and neither is the CoQ10. So you want to make sure what you're taking for your health is going to be adequate for you to heal. That's why I'm a grandmother of 10 now and feeling great and full of energy because, trust me, I practice what I tell other people.
Yeah, I don't do anything. I don't recommend anything for anybody I haven't tried myself.
Exactly.
And I do a lot of things.
Yes.
But because it's always about finding the best thing. And I found with cannabis, it's probably my number one go-to as a practitioner, and it should be for everybody. Because, again, non-toxic, you cannot OD on it. There's no cannabinoid receptors in the brainstem, so it's impossible. They've done studies on these poor animals where they just bomb them to death, and it would take 70 times the dose to get you high to overwhelm the body like that. So it's completely safe. There is a trial and error approach with cannabis because, like I said, your results will vary. Because everybody has a different endocannabinoid system. It's tied to our genetics. It's tied to our environment.
Exactly.
And you need to find that. You just start slow and you develop. So, again, that goes to what are you using? And you brought up the CBD. And, of course, I get hit with CBD all the time. CBD this, CBD that. Blah,
in
blah,
the hemp
blah, blah.
oil.
You got the CBD, and I had to explain what I do. And CBD on its own from hemp is fine. But you should be aware of the issues of it. So there are a lot better CBDs on the market there were 4 or 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago. But the FDA busted, or they sent warning letters to a lot of these companies because they were making claims. Dietary supplements aren't allowed to make unsubstantiated claims.
Exactly.
And they were making these outrageous claims. What they also did is they tested these about 20 each year for content. And what they found was hardly any of them had any CBD or any cannabinoids in them or trace amounts.
Really?
Very below the therapeutic dosing.
Oh, my goodness.
And these were for
I didn't know
people.
that.
They were for animals. Yeah, very bad news. Now, there are so much more better reputable brands out there that are being sold. Their third-party testing and verification is really extremely important. Where the hemp's coming from. Hemp and the cannabis plant is a bioaccumulator. So that means it soaks up everything in the soil. So if you're not planting in organic, it's just like turmeric, right? You got to be careful. You always get organic turmeric because if it's grown someplace that you're exposed to, a lot of hemp comes from Eastern Europe, and they haven't been so good with their environmental, especially when they were in the communist years. So you're just getting all that stuff soaked into the plant. And the difference with hemp and cannabis is it's the same cannabinoids. There's no difference in the cannabinoids, except the concentrations are completely different, and there's very little THC in hemp because hemp's been bred for industrial purposes. Cannabis has been bred for the flower.
Yes.
Hemp is mostly male, cannabis mostly female. So that takes a lot of the stalks to make this hemp oil into CBD. So you're getting potentially exposed to a lot more toxins.
Yes, you are.
So there's the issue is there anything in it? Therapeutic? Is it corrupted? Is there anything bad in there you don't want that's working against you? And then what's the strength? So CBD in a tincture form like you're going to buy online is fine for a lot of people. I mean, there are better brands, and it works with the animals great. And the great thing about animals is they don't know what they're getting, and they're just running around happy. They don't know. They don't have any bias. They don't have any programming. So it's just like, great, keep giving me that stuff. I can run around like a new dog.
That's when you go from the normal and feeling good to feeling optimal.
Optimal homeostasis, absolutely.
That's what we're looking at, your optimal level.
And we can all have that.
Yes, we can.
And so we talked about cancer, but my second class, which I have a class on Sunday in Pasadena, by the way, if anybody's interested, still have slots. I cover 28 more conditions. So half of them are neurological because that's where the research is,
right.
and hugely effective. Any brain condition, Alzheimer's is probably the number one besides cancer that's been studied. And they've done a lot of studies. Roskamp University did a study where they think they've really isolated what the key problem in Alzheimer's is. So as we all know, it's the plaque buildup, right? In the brain.
Exactly.
It's just clogging all the receptors and the neurons, and they're not getting a transmission. The clearance out of the brain through the blood-brain barrier, there's a protein that does that.
Yes.
And if that's deficient, I think it's the LRP1. If that's deficient, you're going to have this plaque backing up because everybody makes plaque.
Yes, we do.
But cannabis helps actually develop this protein so that it will pull it back out of the brain. There's 25 ways it helps with Alzheimer's. So, I mean, it helps with the plaque reduction. It helps the effect of the plaque. It's neuroprotective. So don't let anybody ever tell you cannabis kills brain cells. It grows brain cells.
Well, okay? I have a gentleman who I've been working with him closely for prostate, but I'm telling you, his memory is like sharp now. Yeah. I mean, and at first it was like slowing down,
right.
And that's several people.
Yeah.
And he's recalling everything. And this person's almost 90 years old.
Right.
It's almost 90 years old, so he is doing phenomenally well.
Yeah. So they've done studies at OSU. I think there was an Alzheimer's study. And they actually brought the cognitive function in older mice back to on par with younger mice, with the equivalent of what we would have of a puff a day. So like a puff off a vape pen. So a very small amount. Again, not enough to get you high. That was enough to improve these mice' performance up to where the younger mice were. So the other one I wanted to bring up is anxiety. And I think it was Virginia Commonwealth. They did a study with called a Morris water maze. So they take these mice. Half of these mice don't have a functioning endocannabinoid system. So they're knockout mice. So they're bred not to have the CB1 receptor, which is important in the brain.
Brain, yes.
That's what THC plugs into. And the other half are normal. They put them in a pool. There's a platform in the pool of water. So they show them, and they would drown eventually without this platform.
Yes.
So at first they show them where the platform is. Then they move the platform, and they put the mice back in. And guess what the mice, with the knockout mice without the CB1 receptors, did? They went back to where they thought the platform was every time, and they drowned. Because they didn't have the neuroplasticity.
Yes. So
they were stuck in this fight or flight panic mode and not able to think. It's called the amygdala hijack. So the amygdala gets stuck, and we can't think. All we can do is react, fight or flight. You run from the bear or fight the bear, and you don't get a chance to think through your problem. It's like the book Who Moved My Cheese with the mice. One of them, the cheese was gone one day. He went through the maze. He found more cheese. The other one was stuck. He couldn't process it. And cannabis, the amazing thing from this study, which I love, is it demonstrates why cannabis is not a medicine, why people are suppressing it. Because the very people who are suppressing it, a lot of these people are well-meaning, but they're stuck in this mindset. It's a religious thing, which is ironic because it was used in religious practices, even in the Bible, the holy anointing oil, which there's contention about that, but it looks pretty solid. Those are the people that need cannabis the most. So the people fighting it the most are the ones who need it. You need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to overcome and think outside of the box. And cannabis allows us to do that. I mean, obviously you can abuse it and do too much and become a total stoner and a slacker, and we all know that, especially with young kids. And that's a one group that should not be doing cannabis in large amounts, unless of course they have a medical issue. Kids up
and then
to
where
20,
again
25
where
years
is it
old.
coming from? Those are the people running to the dispensaries and getting this the popcorn and the candy and the this and the that. This is why we have so many psychological disorders and people presenting into the emergency room now. It has heightened
Oh, yeah.
ever since they put up the dispensaries.
And the synthetic versions of cannabis are very toxic and deadly.
Yes.
They've had a lot of problems with that. So unfortunately,
and everything is grouped onto one thing.
Of course, everybody thinks, oh, it's cannabis.
Yes.
Yeah, it's cannabis.
And they don't
we told
realize,
you not to legalize it. Look at
Yes.
these problems. And so that's really part of my focus now is
yes.
I want to educate. I want to take this information and get it out of there. I think I was kind of in a unique position to come across this information because I've been a student of history, kind of all,
yes.
amateur, but still I know that things are suppressed, and unfortunately, when you look at the story of this thing, it's just so big.
Yes,
it's a huge topic. I mean, this is what I call the greatest story never told. And when it all comes out and when people embrace and accept it, and I'm hoping that pharma does not try to take it over and co-opt it, which I know they probably will.
They have.
This is going to be up there with the suppression of Tesla and free energy. This is going to be up there with one of the great drawbacks to mankind. There are people suppressing our advancement, unfortunately, humanity for their own purposes, and this has got to change. But it's going to take grassroots. It's going to take education. I'm doing my best to try and move that forward.
Well, this is why I have you on the show today. I have a lot of practitioners and people who are watching the show. I will be passing it on to others. I'm going to be a member of an organization that I'm really excited about that's dealing with functional medicine. And that's really my practice now. I kind of specialize. Everything now just have new titles. Holistic medicine has been functional medicine.
Naturopathy, traditional naturopathy.
From day one,
Right.
So a lot of things come up with new titles, but there's more of your medical practitioners and physicians who are under this because of the doctor who heads up functional medicine. So actually I will be joining with them actually Thursday. And there's a lot of their members that are watching the show today. So you
Fantastic.
should have a nice class.
My class really to date has been mostly alternative natural practitioners like myself. But we are starting to get more doctors, and I really want to reach out and get more of the doctors and nurses involved.
You will have them.
Yeah, because we need to get this out there. We need to mainstream it, and we got to get it out from the underground. We have to get it out in the media. We have to expose people. We have to get studies done. We have to get, cannabis doesn't really fit into the modern medical foundation, unfortunately, because it's not a drug. It's not patented. I mean, they're trying to make their own versions. They don't work. The reason they don't work is a lot of times they're synthetic, but they're isolated compounds. They're not the whole plant. When it comes to cannabis, whatever your religion is or your belief of how we got here, or higher power, or evolution, there's something about this plant. It's just, and it's not just medicine. The hemp can be used to make anything. So when you look at shelter, you look at clothing, you look at food, nutrition, you look at medicine, fuel. Henry Ford made a car that was partly made of hemp and also ran on hemp oil as a biofuel. You can make houses out of this stuff. Hempcrete, they don't burn. They're fire resistant. This plant does everything for the human race that we need, and we need to embrace it, not suppress it.
And the clothing is so soft.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's softer than cotton. Yeah, way better.
And hemp, you had to grow hemp here. When this nation was founded, there was a must-grow law.
Yes.
You had to grow hemp because it was so important to the survival of the country. And ironically, the Declaration and Constitution were written on hemp paper.
Really, I didn't know that.
And then of course it was made illegal, not that it did anything on its own, but because it looked like, and it's the same species as cannabis, and of course they called it marijuana.
Yes.
So they demonized it. A classic demonization propaganda by Hearst in the papers, Reefer Madness, the movies.
Yeah.
And there was a problem with Mexicans coming across the border because they liked to smoke it recreationally. That wasn't a problem in the U.S. We were using it as medicine. But they liked to party, and they were coming across. There was the Mexican Revolution in 1910. There were a lot of issues with the border states, and the border states, people don't realize this, 30 states already outlawed cannabis before the federal government did.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know
because
that.
a lot of that was because of the border issues. I mean, we're still having border issues. We probably always will with Mexico. But
in California,
just the nature of society and culture, and that's ongoing. But, it was a huge problem. And, they weren't busting Americans for it. They were busting the Mexicans as a way to, prosecute them, get them back over the border. So
exactly.
It's an incredible story. It's one that needs to be told.
Yeah.
Because
I'm going to have to bring you back
powerful.
again because there's just so much information.
Yeah, it really is.
And even with your classes,
and there's more all the time.
It's
always
it's
every
constantly
day there's
growing.
new,
Yeah,
there's new stuff.
and you see a new case, a new study,
Yeah.
and sarcoidosis and autoimmune disorders. I'm seeing some wonderful things turn around. Again, I don't want a person to think it's a standalone because you have to change the diet.
Absolutely.
Now, you can't go and say, well, I'm doing the cannabis and I'm still eating sugar and I'm doing this and doing that.
That's like the allopathic model, single bullet. Just take this and you'll be better. No. You got to do everything to lower stress. You need your family, your support group. You need to do the diet. You need to get the sunlight. Sunlight is so important for mitochondria. It's crucial.
It is.
It's much more than vitamin D, and we're learning more about that.
More and more research.
Absolutely.
So, and actually, too, when your vitamin D levels are 60 and over, your chances of developing cancer and heart disease and strokes are a lot less. A lot less. So, know what your levels are. Again, go to Life Extension and test yourself. See what your levels. Don't wait until you have an appointment.
You can get the kits ordered.
You can order the kits.
You don't have to go to a doctor.
Yeah, you can order from Life Extension, and you don't need a doctor. Yeah,
right.
But the kits are good too.
Yeah.
But then you want to do the other tests. Definitely know the cortisol levels.
Always test, and we like to test too, and we'll be able to do more testing. As in our collective and working with patients, so we can track. It's really important to be able to track progress.
Oh yes, and that's what I do in my clinic.
See, and the family can see. And,
exactly.
We've had people that went back to chemo and then they stopped doing the oil and unfortunately took a turn for the worse. And
I see that a lot
too.
Yeah. Or the thing is, what make it will give it a bad name as well, is that people will start on it, do well, go into remission.
Oh, yes.
Then they'll stop everything.
I'm glad you brought that up.
They'll stop everything,
yes.
and then
I'm so glad
it comes
you brought
back,
that up.
and then the family said, well, we told you it didn't work.
We've had
Well,
that
they
happen.
stopped everything, and their diet went back to the sugar and the
They partied,
and the gluten,
they celebrated,
didn't sleep, and the alcohol, and then they want to bring. One person even went back smoking cigarettes.
So the oil,
and it's like, everything was.
The oil can be expensive for a treatment like this. However, once you're in a remission state, you just need a small maintenance dose.
You can decrease it,
to keep the cancer stem cells, which I'm sure you're familiar with, from bringing the cancer back.
Exactly.
And there's only 2 substances we know of that are effective to suppress these cancer stem cells. One is cannabis, the other is curcumin from turmeric.
Oh, yes.
There have been studies on that. So they have to stay on a maintenance dose, and we've seen the difference. The people who stay on the maintenance dose are fine. They stay in remission.
Yes.
The people who don't, unfortunately, we've lost a few because they didn't get back on in
time.
time.
And they'll ask me, well, do I have to stay on this for life?
Yeah.
Well, do you want to continue to live?
Well, yeah.
That's
it's
the
not
bottom
just
line.
your cancer. This is going to help everything.
Everything. Do you want to continue to live?
This is going to be your number 1 preventative.
Yes.
It help you with everything. Because it's the endocannabinoid system. It's like nothing else. I've never seen anything like it. There's nothing better for cancer, nothing better for dementia.
But make sure that you consult with a practitioner. My guest today, Kelly Brown, and myself, and there's other people. But, learn. I mean, go through the classes yourself. Things that you can pass it on to others. But you want to know this yourself. Education is so powerful. Yeah. And I am so happy. We're about to end the show. I just got a signal from my wonderful producer here, Jarvis. And so I want to say, because we're just about out of time, that it has been very educational having you here today.
Thank you so much.
And the information, and you will be back again because things are constantly changing. And I tell people, test, do not guess. Test.
Always more books.
Test. Hold your book up a little bit so they can see. Test, do not guess. Okay? We want to know. So as you go through this journey, let's make sure that you're with a practitioner so things can be monitored, and make sure that you are healing and going through the state. Then you know when to titrate and start decreasing the dosage. This is what I do with my patients, and this is what you're doing here as well, Mr. Brown. And I just want to thank you so much for being a guest.
Dr. Lee. I really,
I really do. And I can't tell you how honored I am that you have taken the initiative of your life path to do this. And we all have given a wonderful gift but you have taken your life path to do this. Now, I want everyone to repeat after me because we are totally out of time now. Real quickly here, repeat after me as I always end my show. I am so grateful that I am a magnet for miracles. And I am a magnet for miracles to know Kelly Brown. Thank you.
I am for you, Dr.
God bless you.
Join us every Wednesday live at 11 a.m. for NuWellness TV with Dr. Lee. Remember, healthy mind, healthy body.